Decorating Pages is a podcast dedicated to taking you behind the scenes of the designs of your favorite TV shows and films. Each episode, I'll be sharing design stories from some of Hollywood's most famous sets. Interviews from set decorators, production designers, directors, and actors about creating the look of TV and film, about their design inspirations, and stories that take sets from page to screen. Hello, and welcome to Decorating Pages. I'm your host, Pt.1. Well, it's been a long time since I left you without a dope beat to step to. I guess I've got a little explaining to do. I launched this podcast last May, and at the same exact time, I also launched my journey into motherhood. I found out I was pregnant last May, and then found out it was twins, all while working on the third season of The Good Place. From there, I went right into the last season of Veep, which was really hard and very time-consuming, and I hope you've seen it. It's hysterical. My twins were born 5 weeks early, and I worked up until the day I delivered. Somehow I finished Veep with the help of David Smith, another decorator. I've been in a newborn bubble and sleep-deprived, but these late nights have given me some sleepy time to think of new topics and interviews that I want to share. So thank you for sticking with me, and especially to everyone who has subscribed and those who have emailed me and asked questions and the encouragement. I really, really thank you. Joining me this episode is production designer Derek Hill. I've known him for a long time, and he's a very unique production designer. We love to catch up, and so much so that this will be a two-part interview. He was too good to edit. Joining me on this episode is production designer Derek Hill. If you don't know his name, that's one thing, but you have definitely seen his work. A career that spans since the early 80s, he's set decorated films such as Silkwood, Trip to Bountiful, Born on the 4th of July, Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls, and so many more. He's art directed JFK, Any Given Sunday, Three Kings, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, and his production designed TV films like House, Into the Wild, W, Community, Hatfield and McCoy's, Bonnie and Clyde, Southpaw, Magnificent Seven, All Eyes on Me, Ozark, and SMILF. He has 5 Art Director Guild nominations and 3 Emmy nominations. He's currently working in New Zealand on a pilot for ABC. Phew! Well, Derek, I'm out of time.
Okay, that was good. Good for me.
Thanks so much. Really, thanks for stopping by. That's all I got. I mean, I didn't even mention that's like a quarter of the titles that you have worked on. It's simply amazing, your resume.
You didn't, because then they realize I'm an old guy.
No. I mean, the titles to me is just like, man, I've seen basically all your work, and it's phenomenal. I mean, what a career that thus far, and you're still trucking.
Well, I feel lucky. You know, I've surrounded myself with great people through the years. I've tried to mentor as many people as I possibly could in the industry, and I try to share and make everybody a part of the show. On this particular show, I'm working with a set decorator that I've never known, and I've got to build an entire town that's been set for a couple of 100 years. And so I said, you know, before I decide what each of these buildings are going to be, why don't you, because I came from the decorating field, and there's no sense making your job more difficult than it already is why don't you go out and you shop and you think about exactly what you're doing and what you can get that's going to make this look, because it's a period looking film. And we're going to do like a blacksmith, and we're going to do a woodworking shop, and we're going to do a grocery, like a market that goes in town, because they're stuck on this continent where there's only the resources that are available that have washed up, or they create themselves. So let you go out, spend a couple of weeks figuring out what it is, and then I'll design the look of the town based on what you can get dressing for. So that we work in this field and I always try to share this with all my set decorators and the art directors and things. So I try to make everybody a part of it. That when we go in there, so that cohesive wise, we all come together and figure out what we need.
Like, yeah, I mean, the collaboration, as I know, between designer and decorator is you're hand in hand through the whole thing. And whenever there's an opportunity that the designer has come even to me and said, like, say, fabric, well, what fabric can you find first? And then we'll build like color palette off of that. And that's just a small little speck. It sounds like you're giving a lot more, lending a lot more to the decorator and the ability to, when building the realistic, what would they have? And it would come from the furniture and such that they've had, and I think that's amazingly smart to build around that.
Well, like another, for instance, when we did the Magnificent Seven, it was a discussion whether we shoot in New Mexico or we shoot in Louisiana, and they decided to shoot in Louisiana based upon the incentive money, which to me was more of a problem because it's not really a Western town. Baton Rouge is really a Western town and Western decor. So we had to shop. We had shoppers working in New Mexico. We had a shopper in LA putting stuff together. And then basically we did 48 buildings in Magnificent Seven and 14 interiors that we worked with because our director we didn't do any stage work. It was all basically practical locations that I built 360 town and where we could do flow inside and out.
Yeah, and that's what they, for camera wise, that's probably lended a lot to how they sought out all their shots and everything, that you gave them those options to come inside and outside and weren't confined by a stage. I'm sure that's a dream.
48 days on the town, which is a really big thing. And then, another more recent thing that I did called The Gifted, we designed a building, like a municipal building downtown, 2 stories that the floor had caved in. And so what I heard from, we did, I think 10 episodes, 12 episodes. And what we did, every director that came in was grateful for the design job, because on so much, when you have a permanent set that you shoot every show, they have to shoot the same stuff over and over. But it was such a big set that we built that every director goes, man, look at these new angles, has never been shot.
Right.
So that made the show fresh.
Which is, I think, too, I don't think people understand, you get different directors in TV almost every episode. But basically when those first couple episodes are done and the formula and the style of how it's going to shot is done, they're guests, and they work more with the actors, but the sets and everything are basically this, and the camera work, that's how they're going to shoot. So to give the directors opportunity, that's important.
As when I first started on House, I came in at the end of the first season when they asked me to come, and it was episode 24, and I walked into the office and they basically go, oh, you need to come here. And I said, well, oh, so you haven't told the designer that he's not doing season 2? I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
So you go in there and then you ask, well, what's the problem? You're on a successful show. So I need to really figure out what's wrong. Well, because why are you making a change? And they said, well, we want you to come look at the sets and you tell us what you think. So as we got into doing season 2, I revamped the entire stage set and spent $750,000 in making it shootable. Because, I look at, because I've done it long enough, and I kind of know the needs of the DP and the camera and what the directors want. I try to design things that are easy for shooting and the flow of shooting, wild walls, gimbal windows, that kind of stuff that makes it easier for work. And then as my relationship developed on House, I got to deal with the writers more so, because Dr. House had 1 or 2 crazy things that he was going to do on each episode. and you got about 9 days, 8 to 10 days with a 2-day overlap between episodes. And I would just go, listen, I need some outlines so I could figure this out before we get into it. So
Right.
then when we started doing the concept meetings, we basically, I did season 2, it was a success. I did season 3, I wasn't going to come back. And they go, no, you're coming back. I said, well, I do movies as well. And
Yeah.
so I'm going to go do a movie. And they go, that's okay. Just come back for the concept meeting so you can tell people what we're going to do and how we're going to achieve the things. And that worked all of season 3, and then finally half of season 4. And it was finally, I went to Thailand to do a film with Oliver, and I figured working in Thailand and LA at the same time was a little bit more difficult in the time zones and everything.
But if there's anyone I believe who could do it, it's you. I believe you could span continents and still and definitely be able to production design 2 completely different projects. I know that it's you.
Well, when we did the first Pirates of the Caribbean, I was hired as a supervising art director, and then the designer was in London trying to get his work visa the first 4 weeks of the show. And when I started, I had 18 weeks till we started shooting. So then I'm going, well, I can't wait for this guy. I've got to start designing. So we're designing the cave that was on stage 2 at Disney. And then we go, well, we're going to build the captain's cabin at ABC 7 stage. And we're going to build the other thing at one of the other stages at Disney. So we have 4 stages at Disney. We had a stage at ABC 7. We had Manhattan Beach Studios where we built the governor's mansion interior. And then we had Spruce Goose Dome where I built the pirate ship. And then we had LA Harbor that we built the Royal Navy ship. And then Ranchos Palos Verde where I built the exterior fort and the governor's mansion. So to basically do a once checking on all the locations in a day took basically 7 hours just to, if there wasn't a lot of problems.
If there wasn't a lot of traffic. I mean, this is LA. I mean, that I'm surprised you got 7. I'm surprised you got in 7 hours.
They were very long days, and then we basically were prepping in St. Vincent. So the designer came back, and then he worked a few weeks and scouted, and a friend of his died in London, and he went home. And then when he came back, he said, I'm no longer going to do I'm quitting. We were about 3.5 weeks till we started shooting. And so, the decorator would do something, and I knew what what the director wanted. And then he would say, well, I don't understand why that's still in the set. I said, well, because we don't have a designer. And the decorator kind of equal on an art director basis in a sense. And then Gore Verbinski goes, well, okay, you're the designer. Now get rid of that.
No, you're it.
So
you're it.
Yeah. I mean, that was the good news and bad news. I ended up only getting the credit for the supervising art director. I worked on it about 11.5 months.
Wow.
But the guild likes to bestow the credit on you, and so they chose to put it there. But I know what I did, and because of that, and I was a little burned afterwards, I jumped back into doing TV, which that's when I met the Russo brothers. And we all know the Russo brothers now, that they have they've been pretty successful, and
a little bit.
They're my friends, and we did, I think, 9 pilots and 8 got picked up, so we had a pretty good track record there. They haven't done much.
I believe I worked with you on one of those.
You did.
So I can boast. I can boast that we did animal practice together.
Animal Kingdom, right?
Animal Kingdom. Yeah. I don't know.
Animal practice. Yeah.
I think it ended up animal practice, but yeah, I think it was Animal Kingdom when we did it.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this though, because you're unlike any other production designer I've ever worked with. You not only design the production in every department that you have a hand in, but you treat these projects more like a business. And to me, it's almost like you would need a title of a designing producer. That's the only thing I could think of when I think of you, is you really design in every department, and you have such a grasp on the whole
the whole project. Can you explain a little about your approach?
I think that, having not really worked for too many other designers, I mean, I did growing up in the business, but, when I dealt with Oliver Stone early on as a decorator, he and I have done collaborated on 7 films or so. And so he would always come to me and even as a decorator and say, this is what I want to set. And then when the designer left, the art director moved up, and I moved up to art director, and he'd still come to me. And the wife would say, well, I don't understand. You're like the first there and the last leave every day
Right.
for as long as I've ever worked with you. And, I don't understand that some of the, here the designer comes in at 10 and they leave at 3 or 4. I don't know that guy. Mine is to help the leadership and the directors understand what we're doing and what we're flowing. And I jump in, and when I'm reading the script, it's not a normal read where it may take me, depending on how difficult the script is or complicated or words that I don't know, or I'll read it and then I'll Google the images, and so that I know what I'm looking at the time, and I'm doodling on my script. My scripts are all marked up at the end, and then
You do an immense amount of research. I mean, you're very visual.
I don't want to be wrong. And then I think that now with the fact that the iPad and I have Notability, and I can mark on my scripts, and I get the scripts. And then what I do now is I email them out to my art director and the graphics designer and the set decorator and the prop person and the visual effects. And I mark special effects. I mark all different colors in my pen, so that everybody knows exactly what I'm thinking. So we're on the same page. So we start that way, which is really the advent of all these new computer programs have really helped. I mean, and I think that, and for me to understand it, like when I did Magnificent Seven, I was the guy riding the horse in, and I said, oh, well, I'm riding in, and I pass the church, and then you go, how far am I riding? And then I pass the sheriff, and then I go a little further, and then I go to the saloon. So then I just start sketching on a pad how many buildings that was. And then I go, well, they have to, let's see, where's the sun going to be? The DP's going to light backlit. So now I have to make the street in the important buildings that are backlit.
Right.
And then and for Magnificent Seven, I went on Google Earth. I found the biggest open land that I could because it's swampy land. And I found a place that I'm going, it's flat as can be. That's a Western, but it's not going to work in Louisiana because I don't have mountains and trees to hide the stuff. So I found this great lady that had this acreage. She was 82 years old. I went and met with her. She would drive her Buick Electra out there. We'd have a 4-wheel drive, and we'd go out there. I don't let him, somebody else is scouting this. I said, we're shooting here. I'm taking this place, okay? And so then we laid it out, and I took all these angle shots. And then when I went back to LA, I said to the director, Antoine Fuqua, I said, this is where I think we're doing it. And this is why. Because we're in Louisiana and we're not in New Mexico, I don't want flat lands. I want rolling hills. And then that way, our visual effects plate line will be above the trees, which will help and ease the process. And then, we come about it that way. I think that it didn't get a lot of press and publicity because I think people thought, oh, they shot that in one of the ranches in New Mexico.
Right, and it's completely not. So you made it. See, you worked against yourself. You made it look too good, and then
Well, and then when we did Olympus Has Fallen, we go, we're going to shoot it in Shreveport, and I go, Shreveport. He goes, yeah, D.
DC for Shreveport, yeah.
So then I found this road, and then I just put the White House at about 100% scale on the front that I've built. And then I put the ceremonial drive at the front of the White House, and I built Pennsylvania Avenue in front, and we made the streets. And then I built a 3/4 scale roof to put the top of the White House all in one spot. And so we did all the shooting, and I said, well, Antoine's going to want the foyer of the White House, like, to be practical, because he wants to go in and out rather than the stage.
Mhm.
So I
Right.
could save money, but just build it all. It'll be more difficult. It'll be warm, but it'll be what works. And what's funny is, a couple of years later, Antoine was going to do a movie, and they go, well, no, I have my designer, and because he builds this, and we're going to have you do this. He goes, well, you know what? My designer built the White House in Bossier City, Louisiana, Pennsylvania Avenue. So I'll put him up against anybody. But
Right.
this is the guy I'm working with.
Yeah. I mean, you've worked on so many films or TV shows that have been on locations. Do you like the challenge of location shooting?
I do. Now it's like it's a when the project comes, it's like, where's it shooting?
Right.
Who's it with?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So those are the only stipulations. It's not in LA, right?
No. Not many things are these days. Not
But,
many of the good ones, but yeah.
yeah. So I mean,
Yeah.
and that's kind of it's like, it was not hard. Was I gonna go? It's like when I finished Ozark season 2. So
Mhm.
I was gonna do, I had 2 offers to do something in Louisiana. I had an offer to do something in Boston, and then I had an offer to do something in Canada. And Canada was like, I couldn't take anybody, and I like to take my art director, who's also a construction coordinator, and we bounce stuff off. And I said, Atlanta in the summer? Are you kidding me? And
Gross.
so my art director has a place in Vermont. So I said, what do you think? He goes, well, I think Boston from May to September would be fantastic.
Yeah.
So we did.
Well, that's a
the
leisurely
show
look
was-
at it. Like,
Yeah.
That's a leisurely look of like, where would I like to summer? Where would I like to fall? Where would I?
And then one of the inquisitive things about it is because it was with Frankie Shaw, and I know everybody's heard of Frankie Shaw lately, and I can tell you that she's a genius in my eyes, and I've worked with a lot of really good people that, I don't know where the stories came from, but I got a pretty good handle on everything. But she called me, and with the Me Too movement, and this is all women kind of show, and I go, well, I haven't done that.
Yeah.
Let's check this out.
Yeah.
So when I called her, and she FaceTimed me, and I go, hey Frankie, how you doing? And she goes, it's good. I'm in the riding. I'm riding in the Suburban. We're coming from a writers conference, and we've been riding and stuff. So I said, she goes, I've seen your name, and I said, well, that's kind of interesting. As you probably know, this is not a genre that I've kind of done before. And I wasn't sure why you were like going to hire somebody that's old enough to be your dad to do the job. And she said, listen, this is what I think. I look at you as a director whisperer. And I said, well, I don't understand.
Absolutely. That is a perfect way to put
I've
you.
seen some of those MFs that you've worked for in this business. And I think of it like the horse whisperer. If you can tame the horses, you can tame the director. And you do those, and this is what I need, your guidance and leadership for season 2. So at that point, how do I
think she
not?
nailed you. I think she really nailed you down there. Really, that's very insightful for someone who never met you.
So how could I turn her down?
And that's part 1 of my interview with Derek Hill. Check out the next episode, part 2, and he's talking about the Magnificent Seven, working with Tom Cruise and Kevin Costner and Sean Penn, SMILF. He gets into some more designing theories and the way he executes his sets. It's very interesting. If you want to be up to date with our podcast schedule, please visit decoratingpagespodcast.com and subscribe to our newsletter. Thanks for joining me. I hope you got an earful. I'm Kim Wanup for Decorating Pages. Decorating Pages is sponsored by Stogie Floaty, luxury pool float. Float 'em if you got 'em. Visit stogiefloaty.com.